I'm going to let you guys watch this for yourself, but I'm going to sum this up. This guy, he says that he has a friend who has a military pension. He's turning 61. He doesn't have a job. Then he says that his mother, who was a single mother, that she was unable to buy a home, and she's in her 60s, and now she's going to have to go on Social Security. And he's saying, that these two people that he know and that he sincerely care about, that they're going to struggle on Social Security. Okay, he's right. Now, what everyone should do when they're young is go and have someone that can be honest with them, that can sit down and tell them, now this is when you're 14, 15, 12, 8, 9, 10 years old. Someone can sit there and look at the person's current academic standing, especially after the first 8 years. Now you're going to say, well, why am I saying this person is 10, 11, 12 years old, and you're looking at their academic standing after the first 8 grades? Isn't that somewhat premature? No. The Romans knew exactly what I'm about to say. The British knew exactly what I'm about to say. The French knew exactly what I'm about to say. People on YouTube don't know what I'm about to say, and they don't care because they're peddling a fantasy. Okay. After 8 grades of school, I woke up one day and talked to some friends who were in a higher class than my family. They were in a higher class. And my friends introduced a word to me called trig. I'm like, what in the hell are they talking about? And I noticed that in games, in athletic games, I was better than they were at athleticism. But in games of strategy, chess, tic-tac-toe, putting puzzles together, auto mechanics, fixing small engines, carpentry, understanding when to fertilize a field, not to fertilize a field, all of these things they were better at. We used to play this game of strategy, and each and every day they used to just slaughter me in games of strategy. We whip out the chessboard, checkerboard, whatever the case may be. 3 moves later, they'd have me. The only strategy game that I could possibly play and compete with them after 8 grades of school was like cards, dice game. We rolled some dice or we shuffled some cards. I had a chance. Pure games of chance, I had a chance. Games that required memory retention and strategy, no. I had no chance. So, all of a sudden they say trig, and then one guy said this word. He said integer. I'm like, what? He said integer. I'm like, oh man, what is he talking about? Integer. So he said trig, he said integer. And he said that he was taking trig. Now maybe he was 11 or 12 years old, and then he was talking about that in a few months his dad was going to start teaching him calculus. He's like 11. Then we would have conversations and they would break down every bit of the conversation into all of its grammatical parts. And they would constantly, religiously correct me. And I'm not talking about correcting pronunciation. They would correct me in terms of that you did not use the proper conjugation of the verb. I mean, they cared about me, so they would correct me, and many times that would make me cry when they would beat me at a game of strategy, or they would correct whatever I was saying. I mean, that that would hurt my feelings. But these little slings and arrows of life, wow. So what I did was I went to the teacher or the guidance counselor or something of that sort, and I asked him, I said, because by this time I was already living in the stacks. Now I'm totally ignorant, but I discovered libraries, and I spent most of my time in a library, and I started living in the stacks. And I found out things like life expectancy. And I found out things like educational attainment at the first 8 grades, and thus how you could project lifetime earnings. So I went to the teacher and I said, hey, can I speak to the guidance counselor or whoever it was? And I went in and this is 11 years old, and I went in and I was factual. I said, I told the guidance counselor, I said, hey, you know what? I'm a poor student. I'm, if not the worst student in this entire school. It is absolutely clear. I said, this is my socioeconomic level. I said, these are the habits that surround me. And I said, I went to the library and I found out that my life expectancy is right around 63 years old. And I said, I'm 11 now. and I realized that that's 55 years in the future. And I said, I am not necessarily sure if life and consciousness is for me, but if along the way I discover that I like living, I might want to live more than my standard life expectancy. I also know that my income is going to be severely capped, and I'm always going to be basically in the bottom 20% of wage earners. Well, teacher heard all this, and the teacher said, man, you're only 11 years old. Maybe your mother shouldn't let you go to the library like this. This is terribly depressing. We don't know what you could be. We don't know what the future holds. You might have tremendous potential. We don't know. Right in and there, I discounted everything that guidance counselor had to say. Because my question was not about my potential, and I go back to it. I had played games of chance. rolling dice, cards. I had played those games, and I was reasonably good at it. And I was athletic and strong at 10. So I knew enough to know that if you could play a game of chance and you won, the only way that you could take your winnings is if you were strong enough to take them. So I had already understood that concept of life, and I knew that there would be opportunities in life to make strong arm moves. Well, I understood that. I completely understood. And most 10, 11, 6, 7, 8-year-olds that were from my situation, they understood that, hey, if I can't get it like that smart kid can, I've got to go out there and take it. I understood that far better than that guidance counselor possibly ever could or would, because he never had to get out there and take anything an entire day of his life. And he explained that to me. He didn't spend one sleepless day hungry. His house, the house of his mother, the house of his grandfather, the house of everybody that he knew, the roof did not leak. I was moving the bed around, if there was a bed, because most of the time I was sleeping on the bare floor, and a lot of times the floor was just dirt. So I'm moving the bed around so that I'm not sleeping in a muddy puddle. You know? So he couldn't understand that I already knew about, go out there and take yourself something. So here's this guy, and he's talking about his mother and the American people are fighting to survive and all of this sort of thing. The Marine that he's talking about should have projected when he was 11 years old, and his mother should have projected when she was 11 years old. And they should have looked at their scholastic attainment in the first 8 grades and let that be the best determinant of their future. That's what the Romans said. That's what the British, at the height of the British Empire, said. That's what the French said. That's what the Spanish said. See, one of the things that goes on is that you think that explorer, that he was an idiot. And that's because you don't read him. You read any of those great explorers, like I'm reading Americus Vespucci. And when Americus Vespucci goes to Santa Catarina, Americus Vespucci was brilliant. I can read Christopher Columbus in Latin. Cristobal Colon was brilliant. I can read the writings of Henry the Navigator in French, Latin, Spanish, Portuguese. Henry the Navigator was brilliant. See, what people do is they take some idiot. They take the statement of some academic that goes in and reads what someone said, like they read Marx, but they don't read Marx's Latin writings, and they don't read Marx's German writings. They read Marx in an English translation, and then they run around and tell you what Marxism is all about. That's what happens. And so you pick it up and run with it, and you don't realize that that's Marxism with their Kool-Aid mixed in. So if these two people had just looked at what Cicero said, and remember, Cicero, after his formal education, which was the first 8 8 grades became a legal apprentice. Einstein was prepared for the university after the first 8 grades in a Semitic Jewish primary school system. The first 8 grades. His future was determined after the first 8 grades. Isaac Newton, his future was determined after the first 8 grades. Jonathan Swift, Dr. Jonathan Swift, his future was determined after the first 8 grades. Frank Baum, Dr. Frank Baum, Wizard of Oz fame, his future was determined after the first 8 grades. You can go on and on and on and on of all of these people, and their future was determined based upon their performance after the first 8 grades. Okay. You look at incarceration and recidivism. Those who are incarcerated the most do really, really poorly at the first 8 grades. And those who are recidivists, they are most frequently, if not always, the people who do not correct the missing gaps in knowledge after the first 8 grades. Now, what you're going to say is you're going to pick somebody like Al Capone, and you're going to say that he was a successful businessman and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. And what you're not going to understand is that you could not measure what Alphonse Capone knew after the first 8 grades because he was not an English speaker. After the first 8 grades, Alphonse Capone was still speaking Italian. If you don't know any Italian, you are not going to understand that Italian is a bridge between ancient Greek and Latin. And when you go to your doctor will be speaking Italian. You're not going to understand that. He's going to have English words, but it's going to be with Italian slapped in there. Your engineer will be speaking Italian. You're not understanding that. That scientist that you hold in high esteem more than Alphonse Capone, he will be speaking Italian. So because Al Capone was bi and trilingual, he was the equivalent of a guy that went to Harvard in his day. Now you're going to say, no, how can that be? The reason is, and I'm going to say this again, if after the first 8 grades, Alphonse Capone was still speaking Italian, you cannot measure his intelligence in English. The perfect example of that is Dean Martin, who was just absolutely brilliant. And you look at his struggles as he was an Italian speaker, and then all of a sudden his English emerged, and then he became a brilliant Hollywood actor. So what you're going to say is well, yeah, but he didn't have many years of formal education. Okay, now you're going to say the exact same thing about Frank Sinatra. Yeah, he didn't go to the university, and he was wealthy. Okay, then you're going to say, well, what about Elon Musk? Elon Musk's dad was one of the best engineers in the history of South Africa, if not in the world. Elon Musk makes that perfectly clear. Well, you're going to say, well, what about Bill Gates? Bill Gates' dad is one of the finest legal minds in the history of the United States. I don't know if he's a patent lawyer. I don't know what his legal specialty is, but the man is flat out brilliant. It goes back to my friends. One of my friends' father, his father was a surgeon. So because his father was a surgeon, he could sleep through the first 8 grades. Because from 0 to 5, his father established a firm foundation, and he knew everything that was going to occur within the first 8 grades. Matter of fact, he knew everything that was going to occur all the way to medical school. The only difference is what was going to be the current embellishments. He could always go to his dad and say, hey, tomorrow I'm going to the cadaver lab and we're going to look at this particular part. What do you think? It's like I had friends studying accounting, and everyone whose dad was an accountant did extremely well. One student took the test home and worked through the test and had his father work through the test. Yeah. That became an issue in the class about how long it took the father to work through the test. Became an issue. But he had a father who could work through the test. So, back to these two people. Back to passport bros. Back to know before you go. And all of this sort of thing. All of those passport bros, the only thing that they want to talk about is whether they get to sleep with the woman, whether they get to support the woman and enjoy her comfort and regale her as their status. And then the last thing that they'll talk about maybe is the support of any children that come out of this union. What they don't tell you is that if they are an idiot who is on a minimum of Social Security or a pension, like I have turned out to be, if they are that type of idiot, if they do not know any Tagalog, they don't know any Spanish, they don't know any Portuguese, they don't know any Romanian, they don't know German, they don't know Russian. They may marry a very, very, very smart woman, but that woman and the child are going to be hamstrung by a stupid father. Okay? They're not telling you that. They're not telling you that. And then what happens is that as the kid grows up, and I've seen this so many times with children that have like a father or mother that's from the United States in lower class in the United States, and see the kid become a tweener. He's not like completely, living in a cardboard box on the street, and he's a little bit better, but he's not like the doctor's kid. He's not like that nurse's kid. He's not like that teacher's kid. I mean, it's more or less kind of like all of the efforts of the father, of that foreign father, has been wasted. And the minute that foreign father dies, or the minute that foreign father's money runs out, everybody is back in the same situation that they were in before the foreigner got there, and maybe just a little bit better. That's what happens. Because if the kid is in the Philippines and the kid is being taught in Filipino and in English, how do you, as a foreign father, without that language, assess the kid's performance in the first 8 grades. Let's say that you come when you're 60. We'll give you a little couple. Make you younger. Let's say you come when you're 60. In the first 8 grades, let's say Mexico, whatever, you come when you're 60. You meet this little Mexicana. I know that best. You meet the little Mexicana, you're 60. Well, let's go to a direct case. Got a friend. I think he went to Eastern Michigan. Graduated in engineering. His father is a pharmacist. Smart guy. Speaks absolutely fluent French. Absolutely fluent Spanish. He has a daughter. And the daughter, 4 or 5 years ago, the daughter was a small girl. Now the daughter is approaching the 8th grades of school in Mexico. The daughter does not speak English, but the daughter is an American citizen. Not a declared American citizen. The guy hasn't declared it because then he would have to pay money for the kid, but he hasn't declared the but sooner or later the daughter will be a citizen of the United States. Okay, so this daughter is completely unprepared. She knows no English. The mother, very sweet woman, very, very beautiful woman. But the mother, and her Spanish is excellent. She's helped me with Spanish, so her Spanish is excellent. But in terms of hard-nosed academics, nada. So she has 3 daughters by 3 different fathers. All 3 daughters are headed in the exact same situation. They're headed right down the same path as the mother. And it might be inescapable. Now, let's go to another woman. Met her about 3 years ago. Her children are older than these children. Her children are older. So, when I first met them, I spoke to her children in Portuguese. They got used to the Portuguese. Didn't speak to them in English. Spoke to them in Portuguese, and then spoke to them in Spanish. And then I took a Latin book, the Bible, the Vulgate, and I had her children read it. And then every time her kid did something, whether he ran a marathon or he ran a 10K or he did this or he did that, I noted it. It was important to me. I made sure that he had shoes to run a marathon or run a 10K. So whatever. So now he's 17. So the mother comes to me and she says, hey, my kid is going to architectural school. Now I remember one day I was with her and she was driving all around town, and what she was doing is that she was taking her son to a piano lesson. Now needless to say, most young Mexican boys, they either want to play soccer or they're going to get recruited into the cartel. But here's this mother taking the son to play soccer. In addition to this, the son showed some talent as an artist, and so she took the son and he went to an art school. And then there was a church where a guy at the church was one of the best piano players in the city, and she, even though She was of a different religious sect, Christian sect, than the piano player. She took her son all the way across town at her own expense, took her son to sit there and learn from this excellent piano player. Okay, here's the difference. When her kids, when the second woman who I'm talking about, when her kids reached the first eight grades, I had already told her what I'm saying in this video. And I said, when that kid reaches those eight grades, if his grades are poor, that's fine. That person can still live a rich and fulfilling life. But it's going to take them some time to overcome what they missed in those grades. So that child might want to join the army. That child might want to, go into volunteer service. That child might want to work retail for a couple years. That child might want to go to trade school. All of that is fine. So don't panic if, this is when the kids were 6, 7 years old, 8, 9. I said, so don't panic. We're going to monitor this. We're going to watch this. So far, everything has turned out fine. So back to this video and watch a little bit of it.
Happens if you have a sudden illness? Do you have the medical coverage where an injury or some kind of sudden illness is going to be covered, or will it leave you bankrupt? Because for many people in America, the golden years aren't golden anymore.
Now, let's get to this. And I'm relating all of this to someone who is in Mexico, Brazil, Philippines. I'm relating all of this. Calvin goes, and the big man in the Philippines is in the hospital. He has Medicare, Medicaid, but he can't get to Guam, and so he has to be treated in a Philippine hospital. So everybody in the Philippine expat thing are all arguing about this. And you got people that are in all types of jobs that are in this. And Calvin from Sunshine Shoulders, he sold medical insurance. But that doesn't mean that his numerics are good. And that doesn't mean that he has any research skills. So everyone is criticizing the big man from the Philippines, saying that he should have anticipated this and he should have anticipated that. And I'm going to say this again. End of life care, when you are from 60 to the day you die, that's going to be a minimum of around $280,000. So we're going to round that up to $300,000. That means that any given time during those years, your copay will be at least 10% of the entire total. That's $30,000 that you might have to pay on demand. So I explained that to the guys that were in the same situation as these two people that this man is talking about. And what they did is that they took flight from America. They went to the Philippines, or whatever the case may be, Mexico, Honduras, Guatemala, Costa Rica, Africa, whatever, and they went to these countries to make their dollars stretch further. And then what they discovered and what you discover is how much money is it going to cost you to relocate to that other country. Now, for me to go to Mexico, that costs about $25,000. Okay. Now you're going to say, well, how did it cost you $25,000? Well, you calculate it. How much would you have made if you wouldn't have went to Mexico? How much did you spend to get to Mexico? So the first year in any of these countries, that's a wash. That's just a complete wash. The only thing that occurs is that your everyday expenses, your monthly expenses are reduced, but it's going to take you 2, 3, 4 years to recoup the loss from the move. Okay, now, so you got 30,000. You got 25,000 there, and then you got to have $30,000 on hand at all time for medical expenses. That's $50,000. That's $50,000. Now, these two people that this guy is talking about, they don't have $50,000. So even if they hit, and I don't either, and if they hit, so even if they hit the escape hatch and go to Mexico, go to the Philippines, go to the Yukon Territory and live in a cabin off grid, go to Italy and pay $1 for a house, and then just stay in Italy. Go to Syria where nobody wants to be, so everything is cheap because they're reforming the government. So you know, go to Siberia where Putin will give you free land. Even if they make all of those moves, they still have to have that $30,000 copay. And as you get into your 70s and your 80s, the medical expenses start to mount, and now you're paying $12,000 a year for the medical expenses. If the average Social Security payment, and I know this, is $1,756, check it out. Now, subtract that from $1,200 in medical expenses, and what do you get? That gives you $562 in discretionary income per month. This man, his mother doesn't have a house. But even if she had one, her property tax would still be greater than or equal to or slightly below $562 a month in the average metro area in the United States. Now, so what you got here is you got a no way out situation. That Marine that he's talking about cannot stay in the United States, but he can't leave the United States. His mother cannot stay in the United States, but she cannot leave the United States. And the Marine, he might want to go to Cambodia, where it's really cheap, but he doesn't speak any Cambodian. The mother might want to go into some Greek island that's really cheap, but she can't speak Greek. Okay? And all of this is when you're 11 years old, after the first 8 grades, and you know what your aptitude is, and your parents or the people that are around you are either incompetent, lazy, or stupid, and they can't tell you what your failure in the first 8 grades mean. They can talk all they want, like that guidance counselor. Oh, well, how can you be so pessimistic? You still have potential. They can say all of that they want. But that guidance counselor, he was steeped in the liberal arts. He couldn't calculate his way out of his office. if you said to this guy, hold on, wait, take the squares of your office, take the lengths of, here, hand him a tape measure, here's the length of your office, prove the Pythagorean theorem just from using the four walls in this room. That guy could not have resolved that. He could not have resolved that. He couldn't put three small blocks together and derive the three Pythagorean numbers in that way. He could, the three Pythagorean triplets. He could not have done it. He couldn't. So he wasn't equipped to guide anyone anywhere. Maybe he could guide somebody to be a public school teacher, but that was about as much guidance as he could do some guiding of. He couldn't guide himself. How in the hell was he going to guide me? So that's exactly what's going on in this situation. This guy is in here whining and feeling sorry for his mother and feeling sorry for the Marine. They could have cut down on their costs if at 11 years old, the mother had to realize, hold on, wait. The issue isn't an issue of chastity. Should I have children? Shouldn't I have children? Should I have sex? Shouldn't I have sex? The issue is what can I put in my toolbox so that based upon who I am and what I am right now after the first 8 grades, and I might have to go to Cambodia, I'd better be preparing myself academically so I can study Cambodian. Same thing for the Marine. He went all over the world and he had absolutely no language attainment. Well, then you got guys on the internet that are telling you, yeah, don't worry about it. You can solve this problem where you don't have any money by just going to the Philippines, or by just going to Mexico, or by just going to Brazil. Really? Really? What about the kid that comes out of this? What about the kid that comes out of this? If you don't have enough sense and you don't know enough linguistics to say that the father will only speak English to the child, and then the mother will only speak like Spanish or Portuguese or Korean or whatever to the child, and the two parents can speak to each other in any language, but they, for the rest of the kid's life, one parent will speak to the kid in one language, the other parent will speak to the kid in another language. See, they don't even think of that. They try and speak it. They're sitting there, both parents trying to speak both languages to the kid. The Korean mother is trying to speak English to the kid, while the American father is trying to speak English to the kid. And then they wonder why the kid has it all messed up in his mind. Instead of just speaking one language, one parent speaking one language, one parent speaking another language. Okay, let me play a little bit more of this guy and this sorrowful story.
Because they're not producers anymore, because there's really no profits that the system can reap from them, they're left to really fend for themselves. There's the assumption that they've made enough throughout their lives to live comfortably to their last days. The fact is, this is a rare thing. I mean, the majority of the population in America doesn't have $500 in their name to help in case of an emergency. So the advice I give is to make your plan to get out. The advice I give is that your golden years should belong to you. You should have control over them, and you deserve, after a life of putting into the system here, if you are living off Social Security, if you're living off of retirement, disability, if you're living off your 401k or some kind of residual income from an investment, the only way to really capitalize on that, unless you're making $5,000-$6,000 a month, is to really...
I'm going to say this again. You're going to get out and you're going to go where? You're going to get out and you're going to go where? You say this to guys. Say this to guys and they don't understand this. Now, I was in the university and I was in the business school, but I had a high grade in chemistry. Yeah, Believe it or not, I was very good at chemistry, basic chemistry. So some professor, knowing that I was an idiot, over in the life sciences, he saw that high grade in chemistry and he said, hey, you know what? You can have a job in the chemistry lab, and like we'll have some glassware, and you're gonna cut the glassware, and so that we can reuse it, and things of this sort. And what he was trying to get across to me is that even though you think you can't make money over here in the life sciences, you actually have skill at the life sciences that is unrecognized, but we can develop it. I didn't know what the guy was saying. The accounting department was more glamorous. You made more money over there. I mean, it looked like the accounting professors were saying that you were like a rock star. That was like the pathway to becoming Bill Gates. That was the pathway to becoming, you go from controller to CEO, comptroller to CEO. No one had told me about anything about innate talent and interest in life. So this guy is telling these people, as a monolingual, he's now going to tell them, hey, you know what? You don't have enough money, get out. He's going to tell the same people that were not very academic when they were 11 years old or first 8 grades. He's going to all of a sudden tell them to go to a new world, new culture, new language, just because it's going to save them a buck. And what he's not understanding is that the food costs are the same all over the world, and most often more expensive in like a third world nation. The food that Americans are accustomed to eating. Now I'm going back to the chemistry deal. What I learned in Mexico, in the Philippines, was about food. See, what he's not telling you is that Marine and his mother, that they can go get food stamps in the United States. So that $562 that they're having, they can supplement that $562 with $300 in food stamps. So now they're at $800 in spendable income. So you're saying to your mother, go across the border to save money and don't get the $300 or $400 per month in food stamps. But you're going to have to pay higher food costs in the new country, but you're going to get cheaper rent. See? Now, if you know how to ferment and you know the life sciences, then food is cheaper in the third world than it is in America. Significantly cheaper. So much so that easily you can feed yourself on $25 per week. Easily. But see, he doesn't know that. You can tell by looking at his body that he doesn't understand that. And so he wants two people that are listening to him that don't understand this. He wants them to deny themselves the $300 in food stamps that they're going to get. I mean, hell, they can live in a tent and get in, or live in a small, tiny house in the middle of New Hampshire and save food costs. And save on rental costs and run a generator. So what is he talking about here? Let him talk some more.
Really go somewhere else. $1,800 to $2,500 a month is a great income in some places. I've known many people in the Philippines who live off their Social Security and they live great lives. It's the same thing in Thailand. It's the same.
See? Now, I knew this was going to be, and there it goes. I knew this was going to be, let's just jump to Philippines. Let's just go to Thailand. And I'm telling you, they don't speak English in the Philippines. Maybe they speak a Creole, but they don't speak English. So here's someone sitting on the internet who speaks absolutely none of the languages of the Philippines, is not preparing himself to speak any of the languages of the Philippines, and now he's advising somebody to go to the Philippines. That's a great move. That's a great move. What he doesn't know is, and what they don't tell you on these little channels is that in the Philippines, if you know the language, and if you know what the Filipinos know, you can live on $1,500 a year and at most $2,000 per year. Yes, but you're gonna have to know some Tagalog to be able to do that. Yeah, and you can live comfortably on $2,000 a year without extreme deprivation. You can. I've done it. See, but he doesn't know that. And in general, these guys don't know that. Now, there's a caveat. You must be physically fit. You must be physically fit. You've got to be able to run like a 10-minute mile. You've got to be able to bench press your own body weight. You've got to lead an extremely active life. Because when you get to these places where you can live for $2,000 a year, there's no supermarkets. There's no supermarket. So how do you get food? You either got to grow it or you got to go get it. So that hinges upon the Marine's health and on his mother's health. So he's right. He's right. You can easily put your $30,000 in the bank for your copay living in the Philippines. But what he's not telling these people is that they're still gonna have that copay. See how he's missing these little details? Because he doesn't know. He's on here, wild ass guessing.
Same thing in Eastern Europe, in the Balkans. In some places, you might have to be frugal, but at the same time, there's things that you don't have to worry about. Most of these places have cheap, if not free, healthcare. The biggest thing you have to worry about as you get older is health.
Wrong. They don't have cheap or free healthcare. In Mexico, if you are not a Mexican citizen, you don't qualify for socialized medicine. Philippines, if you are not a citizen, you are going to pay skin tax, and you are going to pay 20 to 25% more for medicine. Now, Germany might allow free riders on their system. The French might allow free riders on their system. The Brazilians might allow free riders on their system. See, and what he's talking about is a free rider on their system. Great Britain might allow free riders on their system, but he's not telling you that. He is making a blanket statement that over here in some part of Slavic Europe, they're offering free health care. See, and that's his way of addressing the $30,000 copay. That's why this stuff is all messed up. That's why you gotta know before you go. I know what the laws are in Mexico because I can read them. I know what the laws are in the Philippines because I can read them. See? I can read German, so I know what the Germans are doing. I know what the French are doing because I can read it. In the country, I know what the Portuguese are doing in Portugal. I know what the Spanish are doing in Spain. I know what the Italians are doing in Italy. I finally figured out how to read Italian without ever having to have to look a word up or hit the little translate this word for me. Took time. Okay, so what he's talking about, and I'm telling you, he's giving out some good advice. But if after the first 8, but this is advice that you give after the first 8 grades. You don't give this advice when the person is 60. And if you do give the advice, you got to give some more advice along with it. And that along with it advice, he's not giving it. Watch.
Healthcare is being able to pay for your medications, being able to pay for, procedures that might not be covered by your coverage. But in many places in the world, because the cost is so low, even a trip to the ER and a trip in the ICU may just be $100 or $200, if not free. You'd be able to go to the grocery store and get whatever healthy foods that you need, not just buy ultra-processed, chemically filled poisons that taste.
Okay, now, he's saying you can go to the emergency room. But what he's not telling you is that you don't have competent ambulances in these countries. So me and grandma are in bed. I have a heart attack. Grandma jumps up, dials in Mexico 911. That's still emergency service. Dials 911 and says, "Come and get him. He's passed out. He's not gonna make it. But if we get him over there to the medical place, he might have a chance." You know what? If you're counting on them coming, they're not gonna come. And if they are coming, they're not gonna get there in time. Now, a doctor in the Philippines was in the exact same situation after this whole catastrophe that occurred with the big man in the Philippines. And he talks about the ambulance service. Thank goodness he was a doctor, because he got more or less good treatment from the ambulance service, because he was basically treating himself. But the guys that came and picked him up in the meat wagon were totally incompetent. Okay. So this guy is telling you that you can live cheaply in Slavic Europe, but what he's not, and in Philippines and Thailand, but what he's not telling you is how far is the hospital away when you have to get over there. You have to drive yourself there, ride a bike there, be carried there, whatever. I know exactly how far the hospital is from me. I can crawl over there if need be. But what he's not telling you is that when you get over there, the damn line is around the block. Yeah. He's not telling you that line is around the block. So, he's not telling you this because he doesn't know.
It's delicious, but are slowly killing you. Because as you get older, your body's more sensitive. You have to eat more clean. It's hard to do that here because it costs so much to do so. But in many other countries, that is the cheapest way to live. To buy processed food is actually more expensive in most countries. But when I think of what my friend can do, when I think of the position I want my mother to be in, I'd rather my mom live under the sun on a Greek beach, or in Thailand, or in Mexico, or in Brazil, or in anywhere else, and not just freeze her butt off in some condo, in some apartment, where every year they're going to raise the rates until she can no longer afford to be there. We're seeing reports of that all over the United States right now. Lately, it's been with trailer parks. People at the lowest ends of society are the ones getting pressed on the most. And as you become a senior citizen, and as you're forced to rely on income either from the state or from a retirement, the margin of error in your life is very small. But with what you make, that margin of error is much larger. That money that you bring in could be worth 5 to 10 times as much as it is here in the States. Not only do you not have to worry about the health care, the cost of food, the cost of housing, near as much, but you can actually afford to live. Once you're out of the United States, you're able to travel around, and it's much cheaper. Things are cheaper. And in many of these places, you're afforded the same amenities as you are here in the States, but just at a better cost, and with usually a better environment.
Every single word that he said was true. All true. What he's not telling you, let's say that on the last $300,000 of health care costs that you're going to pay in the United States, you get a 50% discount in the Philippines, in Thailand, over here, over there. And so now you're at $150,000. But you cannot join their particular socialized medical system, and you have to pay insurance, and thus you have to pay a copay. You're still talking about where you got to have $15,000 on reserve. And you're still talking about where you have to transport yourself to the hospital. If you're talking about these natural foods that he's talking about, he doesn't understand that why is food processed in the United States? The reason it's processed in the United States, when you look at the actual microbiology of food, is because the plant doesn't want you to eat it. So therefore, we develop cooking to alter plants so that we could take out the toxins that the plants put into their food to keep insects and people and other mammals from eating them. So a marvelous invention. So the only difference between processed American food and food in other countries is that it both has to be processed, but you put in added salt to stop microbial growth. You put in added sugars because of the osmotic effect. Yeast, other microbes can only, they can use sugar, but they can only use so much of it. So if you put enough sugar in your product, it will halt the growth of microbes. That's why they put it in there. Oils preserve the food. Cream and butter versus milk that is not with a high amount of cream and butter have a shorter shelf life and don't have to be refrigerated as much. See, all of these little things he's leaving out. He got everything right, except for in the first 11 grades, looks like he didn't give a damn about stuff like chemistry.
Environment and healthier cultures that appreciate older people. As my friend said in his comment, there's ageism that he faces in the workplace, but I say that in America, there's ageism that you face everywhere. You know, over the past decade, we've seen a lot of hate thrown at boomers. And while I do understand, and I do get into that sometimes, the fact is that many of the old people that you see at Walmart, at Target, just at the grocery store doing those things, you know, your grandparents, they're probably not those people. They're probably people who struggled their entire lives just to make sure that you are where you are right now. And now that it's time for them to kind of take a break and enjoy the last years of their life, and now a whole new set of worries comes in, and a sad reality that if you stay here in this system, you're going to have to work until you die. And that's injustice.
Okay. I'm often, I go to the dollar store. I love thrift stores and the dollar store. So every single week I go to the dollar store. And I'm at this dollar store, and always when I'm at the dollar store, and maybe now, I'm in the dollar store and I'm 30 years old, 40 years old, 50 years old, and getting older. But I'm in the dollar store, 30 years old. And I look, and there's somebody's grandmother, and she's sitting there, and she has a whole bunch of cans of cat food or dog food. So over a 30-year period, I watch this. I watch older people buying cat food and dog food. And they're buying cat food and dog food until it got to the point that cat food and dog food got so expensive that they couldn't buy cat food and dog food. And I'm talking to these people because of the fact that they're old and dying, that doesn't cause any fear for me, because I already know that I'm old and dying too, or gonna be old and dying too. And maybe it's 30 years away, but it's coming. I know it's coming. And so I'm watching them buying this cat food and dog food. And I don't ever say anything to them, but I know why they're buying the cat food and dog food. Because they're taking it home and they're going to eat it. They're going to eat it. So what this guy is not telling you is that until very recently, if you had a urban house, you could not grow a garden necessarily within public view. So you couldn't grow a garden in the front yard. You had to put it in the backyard. And growing a garden was labor intensive, and a habit that older people in America and people in America had grown out of. And quite frankly, growing a garden takes skill. So even here in Mexico, I come into this little place that I'm at, and the first thing that I do is I bring planters with me so that I can, but the majority of what I eat is going to be fresh, fresh, and it's going to be with local microbes. It's going to be fertilized by my own body waste and food scraps, so that the microbes are what I am. Filipino scientists in agronomy say that that's the best way to do it. Okay. Nobody around here has a garden. And people routinely walk up to me and say, hey, can you give me some money for a taco? Yo quiero por un taco. Tu tienes 200 pesos? There's a lady that comes with her 3 kids, and she comes and knocks on the door. Hey, yo el hijos necesita comidas. ¿Tú puedes darme comidas? I mean, they're Mexicans, and they've gotten to the point where everything comes out of the supermarket. You can't even force it on them. Little boy yesterday, I call him. I say, hey, niño, ven aquí. And I take some mint leaves off of the mint plant that I have. And I take a cup that I have, and I come outside and I pour cocoa in it, and I put the mint in. And I say to the little boy, I said, his name is Manuel. I said, Manuel, look, I'm going to put a little bit of water in this. I said, you guys got a microwave oven in the house? ¿Ustedes tienen un microondas? He says, yes, we have a microondas. I said, ¿ustedes tienen azúcar? He said, yeah, we got azúcar. I said, now I'm going to put this in here. And I said, you can put tú puedes meter un poco leche dentro de este también. And so I get it ready for him. Okay, Manuel is maybe 11, right at those first 8 grades. So Manuel's mind is still open. But Manuel's sister, who's 17, 18, maybe 20, I don't know, her mind is not open. Manuel's brother, who's maybe 15, 16, his mind is closed. But he sees my relationship with his little brother, so now he's getting curious. He's like, why when this guy always comes over here, he's always coming over to see Manuel. I mean, does he have an obsession with Manuel? And no, that's not the case. Manuel is at that 8th grades of school. His mind is still open. His future is not determined. His brother and sister, it's late. Their future is determined. There's not much more that can be done. They have to play catch up. Okay, so this guy is telling his 60-year-old mother and that Marine to play catch up.
It's to me. The sacrifices that you've made your entire life to put forward new generations into this country, I see it as an insult that you can't afford to enjoy your life anymore. You're just expected to wake up, have your coffee, and sit in front of the TV, wait for your grandkids to call maybe, and then go to bed and wake up the next day and do the same thing until one day you don't wake up. I don't want either of my parents to live like that. I want them to live their lives. My friend, 61-year-old Marine, I want you to live your life, and you can. You have that military retirement, and you can do that. You're getting close to Social Security age, why wait? You have the military pay? Go do that. Get out there, maybe live cheap for a couple of years, and then Social Security hits, and then you're just cruising. You fought.
Okay, why can't the guy pull the trigger and make the move, the Marine? Because he's scared. He's scared. Fear is something else. Fear is something else. Okay, I get ready to head off to Mexico, and I tell everybody at work. And I said, hey, look, come September, I'm leaving. So some guy that was my same age, he says, look, and he's Mexican. I'm not talking about a non-Mexican. I'm talking about a Mexican. He says, look, he said, ¿por qué tú estás hablando con todo ese gente y tú dijo que tú vas a México? Tú no vas a México. Okay, so that September, I wasn't ready. So I told everybody, I said, hey, look, I can't go to Mexico right now. I can't. So all of a sudden, it came to a point where the job didn't want me anymore on their medical program. At any point in time, what if something catastrophic had happened to me? All of the people that are on their medical plan are all going to suffer. And they had already had a death. Now they're concerned. So they go and business slows, they get a layoff, and it's coming to a layoff. So I say to my buddy, I say, hey man, do me a favor. These people are cutting back. Go in there and tell them to lay me off, please. So boom, I'm gone. I use the money that I have for savings, and I don't collect any unemployment because they're going to call me back. They say 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. Finally, I jump on unemployment. But the whole time is that I'm slowly moving all of my stuff to Mexico. Slowly moving my stuff. First I get an apartment. Manuel's mother tells me how to get an apartment. So first I get an apartment. Nothing in it. Then I move all of my stuff, carloads, just moving it. Boom, 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 boom. Then I'd been going to Mexico every single weekend for years anyway, So I'm moving the stuff. Bing, unemployment kicks in. Now, I'm in good shape. Job calls me back, I'm in good shape. Everything's well. Whatever was ailing me at the job, now it's fixed. So I had a problem with my right knee forever. So now the right knee is fixed. But also, Spanish started hearing it, excellent. Could always speak it, but couldn't hear it really well. Then I learned, don't talk, just listen. First thing I learned. Life got tremendously better. Tremendously better. So then the job calls and says, hey, hey, we need you. We need you back. I'm like, hold on. You guys said that I was terrible like this and I was terrible like that and terrible. And they called me and said, well, we discovered that you were not terrible. We discovered that you allowed us to do a lot of things that we can't do now. Well, so you're wondering, well, what are the things that they couldn't do now? When a young guy would get into a fight with his girlfriend and he was all upset and he didn't want to do any work, the young guy would seek out advice. So the young guy would generally come to me, and the reason the young guy would come to me is because, except for the fact that I was old, I looked young. So, that's very appealing to young guys. They're like, hey, you know what? This guy is old. I know he's old because everybody says he's old, but he looks young. So, he can do the things that I can do. He runs, he jumps, he can, play basketball. He can box. He can do all of the things that I can do. He's just old. So, young guys, they come to you and they say, hey, got into this with the girlfriend, this, that, and other. Now, I'm old at this point, so I don't have any ego. So I tell the young guy, hey, look, you know what? That really moves me. That really, really seriously moves me. And I'll never forget, my supervisor's son came to me with a problem about his girlfriend. Now, here's his father, my supervisor. And I told him, I said, you know what? That really moves me. And it made me cry. And I told the young guy, I said, hey, you know what? If you love her, that's okay. I said, I've been there, done that. I said, don't let anybody tell you that relationship isn't worth saving. I said, you owe it to yourself to try. Because if you get into the habit of just saying, oh, to hell with it, I said, then you're going to be like me. You're going to be old like me, and no woman is going to want to be with you because the minute you have a problem with her, you just bail. And then he tells me, he says, you know what? My mom is not at home anymore. I'm like, what do you mean your mother isn't at home anymore? Now, I know the father for 6 years, my supervisor for 6 years, he said, my mom isn't at home anymore. I said, what do you mean your mom isn't at home anymore? He said she moved out of the house and she said that she was going to visit somebody, one of her relatives, and she went to visit one of her relatives and she just never came back. So, I tell the young guy, I say, look, the problem with when you are an old guy is that you don't remember how it was when you were young. Now, so he can look at me and he can see that I can do everything that he can do. And when women come around, he sees that women are still attracted to me. But they see that women are not attracted to his father, and his father is younger than I am. So he's thinking about this. So I tell him, I said, the problem with old guys is that they give bad advice. And he never ever thought about that. I said, because they don't remember what it was like to be young. And so I told the young guy, I said, I'm telling you, you have got to be sort of reckless in life. I said, don't do anything that might go out there and get you killed, and don't kill anybody, but you're going to have to proceed with a degree of recklessness. You're going to have to go out there and break some eggs, buddy. So I know what your dad is saying, but when you get a day off, jump in your car, drive down to that university, and plead your case with this girl. And what happened was is that this guy didn't go to the university, but his girlfriend went to the university, and then she got down there, and he was a football player, so he was athletic and this, that, and the other, and a very handsome guy. But she got down there to the university, and all of a sudden she discovered, hey, you know what? I can marry a doctor rather than marry this guy. So these frat boys, I'm going to ride with them. I'm going to slowly but surely wean old boy over there off the Tate. So you could see that that's what she was doing. And that's exactly what she was doing. But the old guys that were advising him didn't understand that if he didn't go to that university and meet that girl and directly confront her in his feelings, that he would slam the door to any future prospects. What happens if he goes down there and then he falls in love with that sociology major? That sociology major knows she's not going to make a hell of a lot of money because she's going into sociology, and she just might be a public school teacher. And that guy over there, he is going to be a highly paid tradesman. No, he's not going to be a doctor or lawyer, but he's going to be a highly paid tradesman. And that highly paid tradesman can help her get that master's degree. Ooh, see, I looked at why he needed to go down there and talk to that woman, talk to that girl, why he needed, and what possibilities would be open to him if he went. Then, once he saw university life, he could decide whether or not he wanted to work for a year, work for 2 years, save his money, and go to the university. He might have wanted to join her at the university. See, so what I'm saying about this guy is, and his sorrowful story here is that in the first 8 grades, if that Marine and his mother saw no aptitude, what is he sending? What is he trying to send them to some place that requires study, contemplation, and language? Yeah, I want the Marine to go to Mexico, or I want him to go to the Philippines, but I for damn sure want him to have Tagalog and Spanish in his toolbox. I want the mother to go wherever she wants to go. Maybe she wants to go to Croatia, but I want her to be able to speak like a Croat. In the very least, I want her to at least be able to speak German, because if she can speak German and English, or German and French, she can go anywhere that she wants to in Europe. He's talking about traveling around. Okay, how are you going to travel from city to city to city to city and you can't speak the language in any of these cities? It's cool to go from Paris to Brussels. They speak French in Paris and Brussels, so if you speak French, that's cool. But once you get to Paris and Moscow, now what's going to happen? See? And it's taken me an hour and 20-something minutes to break down this video, but these are all of the things that you got to consider when you listen to these YouTube videos. You got to know before you go. I got to go out there and run. I got to go out there and get in that 10K on the bike. So let me finish this up.
Fought to survive for this long. You deserve to go to where you're appreciated, to where you can thrive. You deserve that. My mother deserves that. Our mothers deserve that.
Hold on, look. I'm off in Mexico, and I can go to the Philippines. And I'm telling you, I can live on $2,000 a month. I can go to Brazil. $2,000 a year. I can go to Brazil, and I can live on $2,000 per year in Brazil, in Tabatinga, because right outside Tabatinga, not even a mile outside of the city, is the Amazon, the deep, serious Amazon. See, could I go back to Governador Valadares? Well, yeah, but what this guy doesn't know is 10 miles outside of Governador Valadares, you're in a deep desert. You can live in Brazil on $2,000 a month, $2,000 a year. He doesn't know that. He doesn't understand that the average Mexican lives on $6,000 a year. He doesn't understand that. And they live well on $6,000 a year. He doesn't understand that. He's just on here talking. Talking.
Our fathers deserve that. I think this is the last generation that's going to be able to make this kind of escape to be.
Oh, and number one, I don't deserve a damn thing. And what he's thinking is that he goes to the last generation and he thinks that he's invented the wheel. Buddy, you are reinventing the wheel. You are not reinventing the wheel. The wheel was discovered. For the last 40,000 years, urban people that are young, come to the metropolis when they are young. They work in the metropolis when they are young, and then they return to the rural area when they are old. See? So you work in the metropolis when you're young. You go to battle for King Xerxes when you're young. You go to battle with Alexander Grande Magnus when you're young. And then you return to the countryside where it is cheap. That is the natural cycle of life. He isn't talking about a damn reinvention. He isn't. But what happens in the United States is that you have people that have lived in cities for generations and they lose that urban connection. Everything that he's saying that you can do in another country, you can do the exact same thing in the United States. You can go to New Mexico and buy a 20-acre plot of desert for $5,000. Pitch a tent on that desert and save your $5,000 to run an electric line there, and sooner or later you're going to get the $5,000 to run the electric line. You can do the same thing all over Texas. But what you can't do, you can even do it in California, east of Barstow. But what you can't do is you can't party. And you can't get the ambulance to pull up when you're sick. And you can't go to the theater. Okay? So what he's trying to say is, hey, go to Mexico City and you can live cheap and you can still go to the theater and you can still party. That's what he's trying to tell these people. They might not even be healthy enough to party. So they're not healthy enough to return to rural America, and they're not healthy enough to go party in Mexico City. When the real issue here is not whether or not they should get on a jet and go to the Philippines or get on a jet and go over here. You can go pay some guy in Idaho $1,000 a year to squat on his land and run an electric line to it, and he doesn't give a damn. You can pay some guy in Wyoming $700 a year and squat on his land. You can get out of metro Texas like Austin, Dallas, and you can go and raise goats and sheep on a piece of land on one of the rivers, and you're going to pay, and as long as that county sees goats and sheep running on that land, you are going to pay $280 per year in property tax. You don't have to leave the United States to take advantage of lower costs unless you're just absolutely addicted to, I got to be as close to the supermarket as possible. I got to be as close to the theater as possible. I've got to be as close to the action as possible. And you read Rome. There's a story in Rome, and I got it here in a book. And one guy, I did a video in it. He's in Rome, and he's writing a letter to his friend that's in the rural area, and he's talking about the life in Rome and the life in the rural area. Okay, that's all that we're talking about here. That's all that we're talking about. Now, there are some differences in the laws that you can take advantage of that might make moving to a place that has different laws more conducive. See, that's a different issue. But economically, you don't have to move out of the United States. If you have $500 a month in income, you don't have to move out of the United States. You don't. You got $500 constantly coming in, and you got $300 in food stamps. Come on. You can't move to the Iron Range? There's young people trying to get the hell out of the Iron Range like nobody's business. You can't move 50 miles outside of Detroit Lakes? You can't move 50 miles outside of Bemidji? You can't move 3 miles out of Gillette, Wyoming? I mean, come on. Your health is dictating all of this, which he's not saying. He's not saying this because he doesn't understand this.
To be honest, on the low amount of money that I'm talking about. We're going to see the devaluation of the dollar, but we're also going to see the devaluation of other global fiat currencies. But right now, it's a good time to go. If you're older and you can afford it, why not do it? Because the reality is, you're going to wait 10 more years to make the decision. You're going to be in your mid-70s. You're not going to be able to do everything that you wanted to do. You'll be able to live in comfort, yes, but you'll just be living in comfort then. If you're in your 50s or 60s...
Oh, you see these prophets of doom and gloom? It's always the same. Oh, you got to get the hell out of the United States. The place is about to be swept up in the inferno. The dollar is about to collapse. It's going to be all over. Nonsense. Nonsense. It's like people that tell you, oh, the United States has a tremendous deficit. Okay, you're right. But what are they paying for that's creating that deficit? Most of that, 60% of it, goes to defense spending. Okay. Now, so what are you saying? Well, what in the hell are you talking about? 60% of that to 70, sometimes 70% goes to defense spending. Okay. You can't get anything without the United States Navy. You can't. Now, if you take a truck from Mexico City to Culiacan and you want to deliver furniture, hey, good luck. You're not going to be able to do it really well. You need that damn highway patrol. You need those military bases that are dotting the land. You need those guys. Just to, let's say you're going to take a couch from Mexico City to Culiacan to Mazatlan. Good luck. Probably not going to make it. The U.S. deficit, and the reason everybody is so willing to buy U.S. bonds, is because they don't give a damn about the return on the investment. They give a damn about what they're tangibly getting. They're getting a nuclear umbrella so that you don't have to pay the cost of having nuclear weapons. And them damn things are expensive. And the Germans know that. That's why they buy U.S. bonds. The French know that. That's why they buy U.S. bonds. Okay? people off in California that know that California cannot defend itself on its own know, hey, you know what? I like having the Navy off the coast of San Diego to keep the Colombians and the Russians from just up here wreaking havoc. I think I'm going to go and buy me a bond. Back in the old days, you bought the savings bond. And in the old days, when they sold you a savings bond, they told you directly, you're buying the savings bond so we can keep the damn Navy afloat. You're buying the savings bond so that you can keep the Army in the field. You're buying the savings bond so that we can build nuclear weapons. You got the savings bond so we can keep the Russians off our back. But these young guys, they're so stupid, they don't understand what in the hell you're buying when you buy a U.S. government bond. He doesn't understand the British perpetuity bond. Look up the British perpetuity bond. You mean to tell me that with the British perpetuity bond, and that was around 1856 with Disraeli, Prime Minister Disraeli, you mean to tell me with a British perpetuity bond that can be passed down and inherited from person to person to person, that didn't bankrupt the British Empire? So that has to tell you that bankruptcy of a country is fundamentally different than bankruptcy of a person. See, but these people, they don't think. So that's why somebody has to sit here for damn near 2 hours talking about this stuff. I could be watching YouTube and enjoying some sort of content. But now my days are filled with making videos that no one is watching to clarify all of these issues, because these grown ass people who are making videos are selling all of these illusions. Illusions like, I know what went on prior to photons emerging into the universe 380,000 years ago. Every time you watch a video on physics, someone is, and these are really competent people, they're talking about something that cannot be seen, cannot be verified. I mean, you go to the CERN website, and the guy at CERN, he's talking the same nonsense. And I know what they're saying, because I can watch it in Italian. I can watch them in German. And they're saying this, I can watch them in English too, and in Portuguese. They're saying the same nonsense. They're talking about something that is we're going to probe deep down into this. And maybe they can probe deep down to it someday. But what they don't say is right now we can't probe deep down into it. But we're going to step down to it, and maybe one day we'll get there. So do you want to continue to fund this? I'm not saying don't continue to fund it. I'm just saying that right now we don't have the current technology to do that. Just say right now, that region of time, that region of time space, we can't see back there. So we're wild ass guessing about that. Just be honest. So like this guy, okay, I want to send grandma to the Philippines. I want to send grandma to the Thailand, and she can't speak Thai. I want to send grandma to Eastern Europe. I want to send a Marine to Czechoslovakia, and I don't understand why he doesn't make the move now. Why isn't he making the move now? Why is he scared? Because you are telling him that he can live an urban life when he can go and live out in the middle 15 miles from Yellowstone. He can live 15 miles from Yellowstone in a cabin cheaper than he can live in Mexico City. But you're trying to tell him, hey, you got a party here, you got a party there, you got to have all of these females. You know, to just put it bluntly, you can get the bitches. I mean, every last one of these guys always, no matter what happens, they want the party to continue forever. And I'm not saying that the party isn't continuing forever for me. It is. But I don't need this guy to speak for me in Mexico. I don't need him to speak for me in the Philippines. I don't need him to speak for me in Brazil. I don't need for him to speak for me in France. See? I can go to Germany. No problem. No problem. I can go to Germany. Less than 6 months, my German will be real good because I can already read German. So I can go and take advantage of sexual tourism in Germany or in Amsterdam. But he wants the Marine to go and do all of this. I've been to Korea. The language doesn't upset me. So I would spend 6 months learning Korean with a tutor. I can already say most of the words and have captured most of the sounds, and then it's just a matter of 6 months to read the language and say it. Huh? Because I've already been there. Been to Korea twice. Already been to Taipei. Didn't upset me. So this guy is talking about why isn't the Marine pulling the trigger and making the move for a lot of good reasons.
And you can go enjoy, go play, go live your life. Go get tanned, go spend all the time in the sun.
See that? Go enjoy your life, go play. What you can't not have money and have all of the amenities of life too. You can't have no money and have all of the amenities of life also. When you're going to pay the same price in rural America, like on the Iron Range, that you're going to pay in Mexico. So what he's trying to promise these people is that, they're going to be able to party, drink wine, and have a fine time. Wow.
Drink a little bit too much wine. Start dating and find some romance again. Spice up your life. That awaits you in these places. That awaits you.
Okay. Now he's been talking for 12 minutes. I've been talking for hours, and here's the thing. I'm about to get out of here because I knew that sooner or later in these 12 minutes, he was going to jump on the issue of sexual tourism. Now, how in the hell are you going to have all of these sexual tourist adventures, and you are going to have sexual tourism that is affordable? Like Skylar in Brazil, that is talking about paying 500 reais. 500 reais. He's talking about paying 1,000 reais, $167. So you're going to have a great, great, great time on your Social Security of $1,700 a month. And how many of these great times are you going to have at $160 a pop? I see it all the time in Mexico. The people who can speak Spanish pay a lot less for everything than the people who can't speak Spanish. And if you're not Mexican, you have to pay at least a 20% surcharge for whatever services you may want. See, now, these guys, they don't tell you that because they don't know that.
Because here, there's none of that. Here, it's nothing but the hustle culture, and you're going to have to hustle until your last days. So why do that? Buck the system that you paid into your entire life that has no intention of giving you what's yours, and take yours. It's much easier than you think that it is.
Or just do what people have been doing for the last 45,000 years. When you're young, you go to the city and you get your money. When you're old, you go back to the rural area where it's cheaper. People do it now in Africa. People do it in the exact same countries that he's talking about. That's why things are cheap, because they're still doing things like they did it 45,000 years ago. And you can do that in America too. But if you're too damn proud to do it, and you gotta stay in the suburbs with all of your friends, and your only route to go is to get to the old folks' home with your friends, and at noontime, everybody sing Kumbaya. Okay, to never ever change your lifestyle, that's gonna cost you some cash. That's gonna cost you some cash. When you can just plain and simply go to West Yellowstone, Montana, and live live in a cabin and run an electric line to it. But you can't party and participate in sexual tourism out in the middle of the damn desert east of Barstow, can you? No. And your relatives don't want to visit you there. So this is totally self-serving. Mr. Marine, you go to the Philippines and you get all of the females, and then I'm going to come visit you. Mom, you go to Mexico and you tell me where all of the good places are to eat and party and dance, and I'm going to come visit you. Go to Moscow and do the same thing. Then I'm going to come visit you. Every single time you hear people that are talking about this type of tourism, it is always self-serving. And they never ever say no before you go. If you don't go someplace in rural America, like you can go south of Wheeler, West Virginia, and live in one of those hollers as cheap as you can live in Mexico City. Know before you go.